Are we back on?
Hello.
Okay. We're back, folks. The 10th day of the 12th month, year of our Lord Jesus Christ, 2014. Heavenly Father, give us the strength, the wisdom, and the courage to do your will in all things. In Jesus the Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Before we get into more pressing things, I got to make this comment. This was in the Advocate. When was that? December 6th. Oh, remember December 7th. I need to mention that. Come back to that. Local food market gets boost. Federal program to offer technical support to growers and sellers. Lafayette local food market just got a big boost from a federal program designed to provide expert help to local growers and sellers. Huh? What? I'm going to call somebody I know that's involved with this stuff and see what he says about it. But apparently there's a partnership of city parish government, Earthshare Gardens, and the Acadiana Food Alliance that's been tapped for consulting help through the federal Local Foods, and those are in caps, Local Places Initiative. So that's the name of this thing. Technical support offered to communities where local food is in high demand will aid in creating action plans for enhancing local food offerings and preserving small farms. Experts in agricultural, health, and economics will work with locals to develop food-related projects, which could include using vacant land to plant crops, etc., etc., etc. Okay. They don't say how much money they're going to get, but you know it's not going to be $100. Okay. This is the kind of stuff
Federal
the feds,
grant?
yeah, the feds have no business doing this kind of thing. I'm all in favor of preserving small farms because there's a darn few of them around, and two of them within walking distance of my house. One of them is out of business completely due to a death, and the other one looks like there must have been another death because their place is up for sale now. So the small farms are disappearing, and if we get into a situation, which it looks like the country will, the world will very shortly, shortly in geological time frame anyway, if you're not growing your own food, you could have a problem finding it. So the local small farm idea is fine, but the feds getting involved in it, no. The city wanting to help out, yeah. This what they're doing at the old horse farm there on Johnson Street. That's the market they're talking about. That's the market they got pictures of here. So, and then there's 3 farmers markets here in Lafayette, which I encourage everybody to support them. They got good stuff. But again, the Fed's got no business in that whatsoever. I don't care how much or how little it is.
Business in schools. So.
Yeah. Same thing with the education, but that's also been discussed. December 7th was last Sunday. It happened to be on the day of infamy, 1941. It was Sunday, December 7th, 1941. The Japanese attacked the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. What is distressing is the numbers of people out there that doesn't even faze them. They have no idea what happened. What I just said is probably news to a lot of people watching, which is unfortunate. When these man-on-the-street interviews have been done that we've seen on national television, the results have been deplorable. People not knowing where the Pacific Ocean is that live in California, for example. It's bizarre, the lack of knowledge out there. And this is basic stuff, folks. Basic stuff that you need to know. History, geography. If you don't know where your country is on the planet, excuse me, what does that say about you? Etc. So read up on the Pearl Harbor attack, okay?
You know, the disheartening thing I heard about Pearl Harbor is they cut the budget to keep it up.
Yeah, it's falling apart, the
They're
monument.
not keeping it up. One of the biggest days in the
Yeah.
history of this country.
Yep, which the facts of what happened, we've talked about on the show before, the real facts behind it, but that doesn't take away from the victims of that attack. They were victimized by the Japanese military, by the Japanese government, with the complicity of the U.S. government, as was the rest of the Second World War. But that's another story, that if anybody wants to discuss that, I will discuss it at great length with you. In fact, I just finished reading Bill O'Reilly's book about the assassination of George Patton. Fascinating, fascinating. Of course, I have a few other pieces of tidbits on that were not in the book, which is why I read the book, to see if he had it in there, but he hinted at it. All right, back on current events. Unfortunately, current events are overshadowing our history. And as some of these people, these progressives have said, though, oh, we don't repeat history. History doesn't repeat itself. Bull, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't have a Joe Stalin or an Adolf Hitler or a George Patton or Franklin Delano Roosevelt come on the scene. But we're still humans. They were humans back then. The same mistakes are being made today that have been made throughout the history of this country. Unfortunately, many of these mistakes here lately are the same as have been made by the recent past, or in the recent past. In my history, in fact. The Vietnam War. Let's take that example real quickly. We just talked about this with some folks in the last few days, several days, that know some Vietnamese immigrants personally. And they basically echoed what I've been hearing over the years. The Vietnamese are very upset with what's going on in this country today. They see a parallel between what happened here and what happened in their country in the 70s when they became communists. And these people had to flee their country for various reasons. Many of them fought the communists. Many of them were Catholics and had fought the communists, had family members killed, wiped out by the communists. I'll tell you a story about a Romanian, real quick, that I knew personally years ago. A Romanian expatriate. He fled to this country from Romania. He was there when it was communist. And he was a captain of Romanian paratroopers. First time he tried to get out, they caught him. They kept him in prison for a few years. While they were interrogating him initially, they broke both his arms, had him chained to a chair, and abused him something fierce. This stuff going on now about the torture that the CIA has allegedly done, etc., is nothing compared to that, what the communists could do to people. And he survived that and was let out of prison, and later on he successfully escaped. He moved to Houston and became a businessman, had his own little business. And in his best English, he said, "I left my native Romania to get away from the communists, and they are here." This was in the 80s, folks. In the 80s. How long has this path been? How subtle has this path been that we've been on? You know the old slowly boiling frogs story. Put a frog in a pot of boiling water, he jumps out. Put a frog in a pot of lukewarm water and gradually turn the heat up, and before the frog knows it, he's frog gumbo. Well, that's what's happened to the American people. And more of you frogs are jumping out of that hot pot. The
Yep.
problem is you're not doing anything about it. You need to come tomorrow night to the Acadiana Patriots meeting at 6 o'clock
6 o'clock.
at the Robichaux Center.
And we have a really excellent tape, Grinding Down America, that talks about and tells you exactly how we got where we are today.
You gonna show that one tomorrow night?
No,
We'll show it later.
That's too many,
Oh, okay.
too long. We are going to show, not tomorrow night, I'm going to do Niger's deal
Oh,
tomorrow
good,
night
good.
for the people that didn't get to see it here. And one other one that I have, keep as a surprise.
Okay.
But we also ordered the tape America by Dinesh D'Souza, and we're going to have to have a discussion about what we're going to do. Have a movie night,
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
you know, for
We'll
people.
bring some popcorn and some sody pop. Oh, no, y'all bring the sody pop anyway.
Yeah.
And then
If we don't do it at the library.
this weekend we got the gun show at the
Oh, yeah,
Lafayette
that's right.
Event Center. I forgot that the first
I'm
hour.
not going to make a.
Gun show 9 to 5 Saturday, 10 to 5 on Sunday. Right at the top of your $20 bill you give them to get in.
Hey,
Freedom Forum.
wife asked me for my Christmas list.
Yeah, I know, you told me.
AR-15.
Anybody that wants
shotgun,
Jim's Christmas list, an AR-15,
shotgun
12 gauge short
12
barrel
gauge
shotgun.
shotgun.
Yeah. Good stuff.
with ammo.
Essential stuff. Yeah. All right, y'all need to come tomorrow night, and then the Freedom Forum next meeting will be a week from tomorrow night at
Yep.
Lisi's. All right. Tell them about that.
You want to read this?
Yeah.
This was, caught my eye, the headlines caught my eye on this one. Homeland Security head asked if 4 illegal alien Islamic terrorists were deported. And his answer was, no. The 4 men were believed to be tied to the Kyrgyzstan Workers' Party, with the U.S. State Department has identified as a terrorist group. Though they are still behind Egypt identifying Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, and the United Arab Emirates identifying Hamas Cairo as a terrorist group. Well, to make the long story short on this, the interesting part about this is they were supposed to be deported, right? You said they would be deported. Did you deport them? No, not at this point, Johnson answered. What is the disposition of the 4 people? Questioned Chavez. 2 are detained. The 2 others were released by the judge. Not my preference. They were released by the judge and they fled to Canada. And they are seeking asylum in Canada, Johnson said, and then attempted to place the blame on the judge that let the men go. Chavez exposed Johnson to the world as one said the men would be deported but were not. In fact, when questioned about the 2 men's whereabouts in Canada, Johnson could not even identify where they were. Now these were 4 terrorists. I'm not sure about their exact whereabouts, Johnson answered, but indicated that he wanted them back in the United States. I mean,
Who's running the asylum?
don't forget to like Freedom Outpost on Facebook. Outpost on Facebook. I mean, it caught my eye. No, this is scary.
Well, look what they did with Ebola, the mismanagement of the Ebola situation, how that was poorly handled.
It's like,
And there's information about that is unconfirmed, but
let me
it looks
ask you
like
something. What
that-
have you heard about Ebola recently?
Yeah, there's been very little about Ebola, except that there's the probability that there's been a lot of Ebola patients that have disappeared.
Yeah.
Patients that we didn't hear about officially. disappeared
you
out of
don't hear
hospitals.
anything
and,
from Africa, do you?
Mm-mm.
Nothing.
No. Mum's the word to the C3M, the
Yeah, but
control.
it's just a little area in
Yeah,
Africa,
it is,
and then
yeah.
you have the big part, and there's nothing
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on over there.
Yeah.
It's-
Uh,
What Tom talked about earlier and in the first hour, basically all this stuff that's taking place, a lot of it is to divert and divisively take you away from what the real problems are. I'm going to tell you something. On December 7th, I and a pretty good group of veterans marched and rode in the Christmas parade here in Lafayette. And well, there was 4 of us walking, and I will tell you this, that if there was racism as they say it is today, we didn't see it on Sunday in that parade. I mean, it was overwhelming, the people clapping and thanking you for your service and stuff of all nationalities. And it was the same vigorous outburst and cheering for the veterans. And so I have a hard time believing all the stuff I read in the paper about the real issues in this country.
well, they're trying to divide us. This is what Obama's comments are all about. This is what Farrakhan's comments are about. That clown that's on MSNBC, what's his name? They claim he's a reverend. What's it?
Sure.
Reverend Dullblade.
Well, there's a few names we can't say those on air.
Well, he's got a track record of lying about things, just to get himself in the forefront of these racial things. And both of these things that he's been preying upon, involving the police, were unfortunate situations. But in both cases, the dead guy brought it upon himself.
Exactly. But I have a question for you about this.
And it was not racially motivated,
This
either one.
guy, no, either one of them. But this guy was in the White House, right? In the IRS. He owes $4.3 million to the IRS. That is a given. But yet, he was in the White House advising the president.
Yeah.
Now, if you owed $4.3 million in back taxes, where would you be today?
Sweden, Switzerland, Honduras.
And if you weren't there,
If I owed that much to the IRS, then I would have had to have acquired somehow a lot more money than that.
but
And so I sure wouldn't.
the point is that
I know.
he was at the White House.
Well, understand something about the White House. Since the Clinton administration in particular, it wasn't so bad with the Bushes. We didn't hear a lot of stuff about them, even from MSNBC in this regard. So I'm going to have to figure that they probably properly vetted everybody that they put in the White House working there. The Clintons had tens of people that never got security clearances that were working in the White House and working on staffs, etc. That, it wasn't just processing forms, it was having access to real classified information, real sensitive stuff. And they had no clearances, okay? Some of them had criminal records. So I guarantee you, since Michelle, Barack Hussein called her Michael one day recently.
I remember that.
Since Michelle has the biggest staff that any presidential wife has ever had,
40.
she's got, what, twice as many as the previous Bush wife?
Laura didn't even have
Laura
10.
didn't have 10. Well, even more than that then. But probably twice as many as Hillary had. including her daughters are on the payroll, by the way.
What?
Yeah, I've heard that. We'll have to confirm that. It's
We
probably
need
true.
to vet that.
It's
That would
probably
be an
true.
interesting thing.
But again, I got a file on that stuff that I don't even look at anymore. When people send me that kind of stuff, there's so much of it. There's no point. It's like what was it, the latest scandal du jour that they were,
The Caillou or
I don't remember, but see, the media has got to bring up oddball stuff, things that have no bearing upon your life. But then again, you like those reality shows, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And so the reality shows are an indicator right there of what the attitude is of the people in this country. So they can get away with spending $10 million to save rhinoceroses.
But that's been going on for
Yeah, but the
that kind
people
of
have let them do it.
foolishness. Yeah, but
Oh, guess what? The latest fraud figures, the latest information about fraud on government programs is that 30% of the food stamp program is fraudulently paid out by the feds. 30%. And that's billions. That's the biggest single program within the welfare garbage that there is. Okay? It's probably bigger than the defense, so-called defense budget.
now, also,
30% of it is fraud?
yeah, also, the Obamacare, if the states didn't set up agencies, in other words, took the Medicaid, people that signed up in that state were not supposed to get subsidies.
Yeah, that just came out.
Guess what? Everybody got subsidies. Do you realize that is what can take down Obamacare right there? That's another we broke the law deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
Obamacare has got numerous problems. I mean, the list would probably fill a book of what's wrong with Obamacare.
I mean, in all my years, I mean, I understand that each president had their stuff, but I have never, ever seen, you don't know what you're gonna wake up to the next day.
Right, exactly.
What
I
did
know.
they do, what did
I
they
know.
do yesterday?
But you gotta admit, it makes for an interesting time.
Yeah, well,
Remember the Chinese curse, may your enemies live in interesting times.
Mhm.
And of course, they keep claiming about this amnesty thing. Oh, it's Reagan and Bush both did it. No,
That's
not
not
like
how
that.
they did it.
That's not what they did. They
Kinda
both,
like our Common Core boys.
yeah, they lie a lot. What they did, they had already had congressional mandates.
Mm-hmm.
They were fixing some problems within the congressional bills. They're not necessarily properly done because of the executive orders that have no basis in law. But still, nevertheless, it was based on a congressional act that they had signed into rules.
You know, the thing is, when you get involved, and when I say involved, like you and I, and a lot of other people we know, you find out that it's it's at every level.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, my boy's back from his cruise.
John White?
No,
Oh, Crazy Crawfish?
Crazy Crawfish, Jason.
Yeah.
Jason wrote a little article in here. It was kind of interesting. And then he wrote an article about don't do this against your wife's will. On their anniversary, he went to a meeting. And the wife said, "That's fine, no, that's okay."
Uh-huh.
And he said, he wrote a little lesson on this little humor here. And I'm not humor in his part because he's paying for it. But he said, "Don't believe that."
When I get out of the hospital in a week,
He said, now I made sure that we went on the cruise we planned a year ago. But, and Jason was over here and talked at our meeting, pretty cool guy. And I've met his wife, she's a very good lady. But, he's the fraud, and we were talking about it, more on John White's spring 2015 park fraud. They went in, Mercedes Schneider, she's quite a lady, went into the park website. There's only 10 plus Washington, D.C. that are listed as gonna take the park test, but let me read what Mercedes said here real quick. We were talking about fraud, so I thought this would be. Louisiana is not included among the 10 states plus D.C. scheduled to administer the legitimate, he puts that word in there. Pearson developed park common assessments in spring 2015. But here's what Mercedes said. Mercedes, myself, well, Jason's quoting her, myself and a few others discussed the implications of these no-bid micro contracts this morning. I don't expect the majority of Bessie that unwavering supports John White and all his fraud and malfeasance to rein him in over contracting for a test they approve of anyway. I would hope that Christy Nichols, who's the financial, and you got to go through her, I met her, would take a look at this situation, however. Over the summer, Nichols and DOA reduced John White's contracting authority from $20,000 to $2,000. He could do anything up to $20,000 without.
That was dangerous.
So they reduced it to $2,000. I was at that Bessie meeting when they did that. July 12th, to prevent John White from circumventing state procurement laws and procedures for contracting. If anyone is going to put a halt to this obvious subversion of the governor's will and the spirit of the state's contracting laws, it will have to be the DOA, Nichols and Jindal. I would contact those folks and let them know what you think about White's latest scheme. And the scheme is that he's using this, I'm not up on all this stuff, but this other method of doing things, and it's not really gonna be the park test. To explain this, this is 7 pages. The park is down to DC, plus 10. Louisiana isn't one of them. And they go in this article and explain what John White has done going around the back door, but this really isn't the park test. But he's trying to do a thing again that is not legitimate.
Trying to get around the law.
Yeah.
Kind of like what Obama did with this immigration thing.
Same thing.
And Clinton told Janet Reno, when Schimm was made Attorney General, to get around the Constitution any way she could. Yeah, he told her that. And of course, that was before the days of the progressivism really took hold. And now we have them circumventing the Constitution every chance they get.
I've never seen, I mean, every time we turn around.
Yeah.
This
is not the same.
If you don't have one of these books, you need to get one. The Citizens Rule Book.
They're trying with the situation in Missouri and New York with these grand juries. Last week, beginning of last week, you could see from the drumbeat that, and some of them even said, we need to do away with the grand juries. Well, the interesting thing is the one in Missouri, from what I heard about it, what I read about it, it was done more or less properly, the way grand juries are supposed to be done. The DA had very little to do with it, supposedly. The evidence was given to them. They were to discuss it, and they called witnesses, and they did the work themselves. The grand jury is supposed to be that way. The grand jurors are supposed to be in charge. And what has happened to the grand jury system in this country, it's been bastardized and perverted to the will of the ruling elite and the lawyer class, which are pretty much one and the same. And so what we actually had in this situation was people were calling on the district attorney in that county in Missouri to do things the way he had done before. He would circumvent the grand jury and not even take a big case to a grand jury. And they were saying, why did he take this one to a grand jury? Well, it was obvious why he did, because it was too big a political football. He did not want to be held responsible for the results. He knew if it went to trial, in all likelihood, because he saw the evidence, he would not get a conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And the grand jury agreed with him. Excuse me. Now, in New York City, you had less details on how that grand jury was operating. The only real detail I've heard is that the grand jury was convened in a borough of New York that is predominantly Caucasian cops. So, there may have been some justification there, but the facts in that case are such that the individual that died, had he been any ethnic group, he would have died. His physical condition was such that for him to put up the fight like he did, it would have killed just about anybody. Now the cops, in that case, like we said before, could possibly have done something differently. They should have done something differently, let's put it like that. But within their training, etc., they were justified in what happened, apparently.
But the point is, he resisted arrest.
Well, that's the main line there. But
that is
the notion,
point. Had he just
notion,
cooperated,
yeah, if he'd cooperated,
none of that stuff
right,
would have happened.
Right.
They were questioning him on because cigarettes
Right,
are $13 a pack in New York City if you go buy a pack of cigarettes.
And he was doing
he was selling
individual cigarettes.
what do they call it? Lucy's.
Yeah.
Lucy's, and which is illegal.
Well, again, though, did it justify the amount of force that,
No.
that the cops used, et cetera? There were no illegal. Had it been somebody that was healthy, it would have been over and done with, and it would have been, yeah, he would have been bruised, et cetera. But because this guy was in such bad shape, it killed him. Now, again, the training of those cops should have been such that they backed off when he said he couldn't breathe. That would have been the moral thing to do, and they didn't do that. But that doesn't justify what happened afterward.
No, I don't think so.
The grand jury ruled, and unless they can prove fraud in that grand jury, then all these demonstrations and such are just inciting trouble. So, but it's not the grand jury system that's at fault here.
No.
In either case. The grand jury system in the first case in Ferguson, Missouri, actually seemed to work like it's supposed to. Let me explain that real quickly. The grand jury should be, and this was a special grand jury though. This was a problem too. It should not have been a special grand jury. He should have convened, should have had this case brought before the regular grand jury. There's supposed to be a regular grand jury seated at all times because there's stuff happening all the time. But they only seat the grand jury when they've got some cases. Now, because anybody is supposed to be able to take anything to the grand jury, any case whatsoever to the grand jury. Anybody. Doesn't have to be the DA. It can be an average citizen. The grand jurors can bring cases before the grand jury. So it is the last bastion before the sheriff calls out posse comitatus in our common law system. And Louisiana, though they claim, oh, we're not common law, we're Napoleonic code. The problem with that is that the actual nuts and bolts of the system have to be common law under the Constitution. This Napoleonic code thing comes in with administrative things. The grand jury is not administrative. It's supposed to be criminal matters. So they want to destroy the grand jury system, is bottom line. And they're using this as an excuse.
Wow.
Because the grand jury system can be reconstituted. I know, we worked on that several years ago. And we worked on it quite heavily and in great detail. For naught. Call that the summer without a, well, call it the year without a summer. Because we wasted our summer in grand jury organization. And told you all about it back then. That was back in 2010. Seems like a lot longer than that, though. There's been so much going on since. But in order for this country to turn around peacefully, the grand jury system has got to be reinstituted properly. Properly.
How
And
is
it
that
can
done?
do what?
How is it done?
Oh, it can be done.
How?
It can be done. It's very detailed. I don't have time to go into it. We went into it already. It took us months working on that. It takes a lot of effort. It takes more than what we've got available to us. So it would turn the country around, but we can't get people to cooperate. We can't even get them to talk about some of this stuff that we discussed tonight.
Yeah, we need term limits on the Supreme
No,
Court.
no, it's very plain in here. There's nothing in the Constitution, and Article 2, I think it is, it's Article 2 that deals with the court system. No, Article 3. There's nothing in Article 3 that gives them life tenure.
Really?
No. Where is it?
Good behavior.
Good behavior, right here it is.
Good behavior.
Yep. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, this is Section 1 of Article 3 of the Constitution. Okay? They shall hold their offices during good behavior and shall at stated times receive for their service compensation, etc. Good behavior. Now, the error, this is one thing that I would correct with a constitutional amendment. Once we reestablish the Constitution in force and effect in this country, is there would be a constitutional amendment to define good behavior and who determines good behavior and how they
I
do
was
it.
going to say, what is good behavior?
Well, that's the problem. That's a problem. You see,
Other judgeships have a procedure to get judges out.
yep, the bar, there's methods beyond impeachment. There's the impeachment at the legislative level, which
Right.
you can use that on a Supreme Court judge, okay, or Supreme Court member. I hate to use the term justice or judge when talking about them anymore. Supremes or Supreme Court member. But they're not, it doesn't say that they're in there for life, okay?
That's interesting.
The problem is that the Congress has allowed this to morph into basically for life, appointed by the president, and let's assume that it's in the Constitution. No, spell assume. It's not in there. It's not in there. And of course, there's other ways that the court can be controlled. Congress sets the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court and all the federal courts. Remember, we've talked about this before. Congress doesn't do anything about it. Congress can say right now that the Supreme Court can have no jurisdiction whatsoever on prayer in schools, abortion, et cetera, but they haven't done it. Why? Why? Because, hey, this rumbles, the system doesn't want it to happen that way. The people in charge.
Let's remember that the Supreme Court, Congress ruled that the Supreme Court could not rule on one particular company
Yeah,
owned by one man.
yeah. Now, that's probably not the only case. It's the only case I'm aware of. And that was the congressman that got that. He added that as a rider into another bill, that the Supreme Court would not have any jurisdiction over a land company in his district. Because that land company was under the gun from the Sierra Club for cutting old growth timber or some garbage like that. And he got it put into a congressional bill, and it got signed into law.
Go ahead, caller.
Got a question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Washington, D.C. is not a part of the United States. Do they have to follow the Constitution in Washington, D.C.?
Not exactly.
Actually, DC is one of the only parts of the United States.
Yeah, D.C. is part of the United States.
Territories.
It's not it and the territories are the only parts of the United States. So they're supposed to follow the Constitution completely, to the fullest extent possible.
They're under the jurisdiction of Congress.
Yeah, but Congress
Outside of the Constitution.
Congress messes with them. So, and you could say they're outside the Constitution from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Well, D.C. is a corporate America, isn't it?
Yeah, right. District of Columbia is part of the corporate United
It's 10
States.
square miles. That's what they call Washington, D.C.
Yeah, corporate United States, not corporate America. America is not the corporate United States
Yeah.
is.
Corporate, yeah, that's right. Corporate United States.
But, and DC is basically controlled by Congress.
Yeah, I mean,
It calls for it.
it's in the Constitution
yeah.
that they're under the total jurisdiction of Congress.
Yeah. Congress approves all of the laws that are statutes or whatever they call it for the DC ruling council. Congress has to countersign them. They have to pass that as a regular bill.
Yeah, but when they go to Washington, D.C., they leave the United States.
No, they're still in the United States. They're not in the United States of America.
Well, that's the point.
They're not part of the United States of America. They're part of the United States.
And the laws they produce only should affect that area
do.
of D.C.
It does. It does. You see the stuff, the laws passed by, so-called laws, they're not real laws, the rules passed by Congress. And you will read at the top, get one and look at it. Almost every one of them, every one I've read anyway, there may be some that don't have this in there, tell you that it only affects DC and the territories. And see, that's the only place that Congress has jurisdiction, actually, is the United States, the corporate United States. That does not include the 50 states. So all this stuff that they pass that supposedly affects us doesn't in real lawful constitutional terms. It doesn't even in the writing of it. Read it. Read the opening. The other thing is, of course, in these constitutional amendments that they have passed that allegedly are in effect, most of them have at the bottom a section 2. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Okay? Well, Article 16, the income tax amendment, alleged income tax amendment, doesn't say anything at all about Congress passing any legislation to enforce the article. So how come Congress has all these rules about income tax? There's no empowerment clause in that article. Congress just has the power to lay and collect tax on income, but it doesn't say that they have the power to enforce it by appropriate legislation. Now, they have derived this first clause, Congress shall have the power to lay and collect tax on income, as being that empowerment clause. But it's not the same wording. Look it up. There's a lot of little twists. You've got to read this. People, you've got to get a copy and read it.
I got a copy.
Yep. And again, go back to Article 13. That's not the original 13th Amendment. The original 13th Amendment, lawyers cannot hold public office. They can't even be citizens. And it passed. It passed. And then they started ignoring it in 18...
Because they have titles of nobility, right?
Yeah, because they've got, they're all titles of nobility. They're all, what? What are they called? Esquire. What's an esquire? An esquire is a title of nobility given to them by the Queen of England, who is the head of the Bar Association. But, you know,
Okay, where is the District of Columbia? Is it in Europe somewhere?
What do you mean? No, it's the physical District of Columbia is the one that is out there on the Potomac River. What are you getting at?
Well, I thought it owed its allegiance to the Queen.
No, that only applies to the Bar Association. Now, there's some other stuff that needs to be researched if you want more information about that, dealing with the subterranean, what would you call that? I guess jurisdiction that the Queen has over the whole country, or whoever the monarch is in England at the time. That I don't remember much about that, if we had done any work on that, other than on the Bar Association. Bar is the initials for British, what's it, Accreditation Registry, right?
Right.
Yeah, British Accreditation Registry, BAR, Bar Association. They would have you believe, oh, well, that's that railing that's in front of the court behind the where the lawyers sit. No, that's not what that is.
That's the ship door right there.
Yeah, it is, because we're under
Okay, let me go.
we're under maritime law now.
Let me go.
And of course, the
All right.
reason for that is very simple. Go ahead. We'll see you later.
Bye.
The reason that we're under maritime law is very simple. First of all of these emergency orders that we've talked about recently that have been signed by presidents, current and past, serve to keep us under the maritime law. But also the Trading with the Enemies Act. What was that, Tom, 1917? The 1970, what?
I'm not sure.
I think it was 1917 Trading with the Enemies Act that was amended in the 30s to include the American people. The Trading with the Enemies Act was never repealed. It was for use against the Germans and their allies in the First World War. Well, they amended it to include the American people as the enemies of the country. So we're officially, the U.S. government is officially at war with the American people under the Trading with the Enemies Act. We have been made the enemies of the people. That's why they have to keep these emergencies going. That's why you've got the war status, and there's an article about it. The guy just doesn't understand the whole ramification of it in here about the war powers. And now they have to keep us on a war footing in this country. They've kept us on a war footing since then. The war on drugs, the war on poverty, the war on this, the war on that. And what happens in these wars? Several years into those wars, the war on, whatever we're at the war with, there's more of it. Isn't that amazing? The war on poverty, there's more poor people now than when it started, et cetera, et cetera.
We need to pay more tax.
Oh, yeah, then we can end the wars, huh? Yeah. Hey, Look it up. Research it for yourself. This goes back, years ago, the research was done. It's there. It's on the internet. This is one reason why they want to do away with the internet or control it better. Because this kind of stuff's getting out.
23% tax.
Do what?
23% tax.
Is that where we are now?
Yeah, I think that's what they want.
Oh, they want a 23% tax.
Yeah.
Well, and see, it doesn't matter.
Net neutrality.
Oh, under the net neutrality, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, don't let them do it. But, again, most of y'all will let them do it.
Yeah,
Y'all won't do anything
those
about it.
shiny things that are getting shipped to DC.
You reap what you sow.
You reap what you sow, that's exactly it. And if you
Exactly.
don't sow anything, you know what you reap? Nothing. Here it is here. Taxes shall fund perpetual war footing.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he's talking about some specific things that are going on now. We don't have time to get into all of this, but basically the war in Iraq, where they had 50,000 Iraqi men that were not in the army, but were drawing $600 a month salary from the U.S. government. Well, from the Iraqi government, the U.S. government was paying for it. $25 billion to date over the last decade is what was spent on the Iraqi army. They crumbled the first time they got attacked by anybody. And then the huge handoff of U.S. military arms and vehicles to police. What's that all about?
Don't forget, under the surge, they were paying the enemy not to shoot them.
Yeah, that's true. Under the
That's
surge,
how the surge worked. They paid them not to shoot.
yeah. Yeah, y'all remember that? The surge in Iraq that was, didn't Obama have something to do with that? They paid the Taliban and Al-Qaeda not to shoot at the NATO forces for a while. And that's why the surge worked. As long as y'all don't shoot at us, we're gonna keep paying you. And so it looked good in the papers. Because of the surge, American deaths have fallen off.
Yeah.
But that was because they paid them not to shoot at them. Hey, what the heck? Oh. The stuff that is going on out there, it's like I told somebody.
I have always said that if we really knew everything that was, I'm talking everything that was going in DC, we wouldn't need a lot of psycho wards in the United States.
Well, the notion that some people have that they can listen to shortwave radio, they can look at stuff on the internet, and that's all they're going to do. They're well informed, but they're not doing anything with that information.
Exactly.
They won't lift that little finger to help themselves or help others or do something about the problem. Those people are going to have serious psychiatric problems down the road. And actually, we know some people that have had serious psychiatric problems because of that. It's a direct result of information overload and not doing anything about it. Which, hey, I can lead you to water, I can teach you to drink, but I can't make you drink. That's bottom line.
The famous things that I hear the most are, I don't have any kids in school, so it don't affect me.
Well, I know. Ask, wait, do these people have a business? The ones that say that?
No, most of them no.
Okay. I've talked to business people who, in fact, one of them was in Atlanta when we were visiting out there. We were in line, I was in line to pay the check at a restaurant. We'd just eaten breakfast. And there was this bunch of car collectors were there. Every week they met there for the meeting. Had all their fancy old cars in the parking lot. And I was talking to one old gentleman in the line, and we got into that. He said that his business, he had X number of people working for him now, 20, 30 people, whatever it was. But 10, 20 years ago, he could get by with half that number.
What?
Yeah, 20 years ago, he could get by with half the number of people he's got working for him now. Why? How about that the people that he had working for him back then wanted to work and would work.
Yeah.
Now he's got to have twice as many people
Yep.
doing the same job. And that's where we are, folks. You think that, well, I don't have to worry about Common Core because I don't have any children or grandchildren. Okay, it's going to affect you. When you go to a grocery store and you go to check out and you decide to give them a penny because your bill is $11.01 and you give them 11 $1 bills and you give them a penny and they don't know what to do with it. I've had that happen where they didn't know how to, they stood there and they thought about, what do I do with this penny? How do I ring this penny up? Give them $11.01 and they still give me change back.
Patriot